Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Born in Sin by Kinley Macgregor, narrated by Antony Ferguson. Prologue. Outre-mer. The cold night wind carried laughter on it as it blew against Sin's desert-blistered cheeks and dry, cracked lips. Unused to such a sound, he crouched down low in the shadows on the outskirts of the English camp and listened. It had been a long time since he had heard such. But his hesitation cost him, as Ma rammed a barbed stick into his spine. "Why do you stop, maggot? Go!" Sin turned to his Saracen master with a look so feral that for once Ma shrank back. Barely 10 and 8 years old, Sin had spent the last 4.5 years of his life beneath the harsh hand of his trainers. 4.5 long years of being beaten, tortured, and cursed, of having his morals, his language, and his identity stripped from him. At long last he had become the animal they called him. There was nothing left inside him, no pain, no past, nothing but an emptiness so vast that he wondered if anything could ever make him feel again. He was death, in every sense of the word. Rad handed him the long curved dagger. "You know what to do." Aye, he did. Sin took the dagger in his hand and stared at it. His hand was one of a youth just barely entering his manhood, and yet he had committed sins and crimes that had aged him into an ancient. Ma urged him forward. "Finish quickly, and tonight you will eat well, and have a bed for your comfort." Sin looked back at Ma as his stomach rumbled from hunger. Day to day they fed him only enough to keep him barely alive. He had to kill for anything more than a crust of rotten bread and stale water. They knew he would do anything for a decent meal to lessen the hunger cramps in his belly. Anything for a night free of torture and pain. From the shadows, Sin watched the English knights sitting in their camp. Some of them ate, while others played games and passed wartime stories. Their tents were bright even in the darkness. The colors were faded by the night, but still evident. Again he heard their music and songs. It had been so long since he'd last heard Norman French spoken, let alone sung. It took him a few minutes to remember and understand the foreign words they used. On his hands and knees, like the animal they had trained him to be, Sin crept toward the camp. He was a shadow, an unseen phantom who had but one purpose: destruction. He slipped easily through the English guards until he reached the largest and grandest of the tents. Here was the target for the night. Lifting the bottom of the tent, he looked inside. A gold brazier stood in the center of the tent, the coals from it casting shadows on the linen canvas. In one corner was a bed so large and golden that for a minute Sin thought he was dreaming the sight, but it was real. The carved dragon heads were regal and bespoke the high station of the man who slept in blissful ignorance, clutching at covers made from snow leopards and lions. A man who had no idea his life was about to end. Sin focused his gaze on the target. One quick cut and he would be dining on figs and roasted lamb, drinking wine and sleeping on a feather tick, instead of scratchy sand, where he had to be vigilant against scorpions and asps and other things that scavenged in the night. Suddenly a new idea came to him while the wounds and welts on his back throbbed. He looked about the tent again, noting the wealth and power of the man on the bed. This was a king. A fierce king who made the Saracens tremble with fear, one who might be able to free him from his owners. Freedom. The word rang in his head. If he had any soul left, he would gladly trade it for a night's sleep in which chains didn't hold him down. Trade it for a life when no one ruled him, no one tortured him. He curled his lip at the thought. When had he ever known anything else? Even in England he had known nothing but torment, nothing but ridicule. He had never belonged anywhere. Kill him and be done with it. Eat well tonight, and worry about the morrow when it comes. That was all he knew. That basic philosophy was what had gotten him through his short, hard life. Determined to eat again, sin crept forward. Henry came awake the instant he felt a hand on his throat. Then he felt a cold, sharp blade pressing against his Adam's apple. "One word and you die." The cold, harsh words were tinged in an accent that was a strange blend of Scottish, noble Norman French, and Saracen. Terrified, he looked to see what sort of man could infiltrate his guard, and Henry blinked in disbelief as he caught sight of his killer. It was a scrawny, frail boy dressed in Saracen rags. Reeking of hunger, and with black eyes devoid of emotions, the boy stared at him as if he were weighing the value of Henry's life. "What do you want?" Henry asked. "Freedom." He frowned at the child and the peculiar, thick accent he spoke in. "Freedom?" The boy nodded, his eyes burning eerily in the darkness. Those eyes didn't belong to a child. They belonged to a demon who had seen hell firsthand. One half of the boy's face was swollen and blackened from a beating, and his lips were split and cracked. His neck was red, raw, and bleeding, as if he normally wore a steel collar around it that he fought against. Henry looked down to see similar injuries on both of his wrists. Aye, someone made a habit of chaining the child like an animal, and the boy had made a habit of fighting his manacles. When the child spoke, his words stunned him even more than the boy's ragged appearance. "If you will give me my freedom, I will give you my loyalty until the day I die." If those words had come from anyone else, Henry would have laughed. But there was something about this child that let him know gaining this boy's loyalty was quite a feat, and that, once given, it was truly valuable. "If I say no, I will kill you." "My guard will capture you if you do, and they will kill you." The boy shook his head slowly. "They will not capture me." Henry didn't doubt that in the least. It had been quite a feat for the child to get this far already. He looked at the boy's long black hair and black eyes. Still, his sun-blistered skin was fairer than most of those born to this region. "Are you Saracen?" "I am." He paused. The sharpness faded from his eyes, and revealed a pain so profound that it made Henry ache from the intensity of it. "I am not Saracen. I was squire to an English knight who sold me to the Saracens so that he could buy passage home." Henry lay stunned at the news. Now he understood the poor shape of the boy. There was no telling what abuse and depravity the Saracens had heaped upon him. What kind of monster would sell a child into the hands of an enemy? The cruelty of it overwhelmed him. "I will see you free," Henry said. The boy narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "This had better not be a trick." "It's not." The boy released him and moved away from the bed. Henry watched as the child went to squat by a wall with one hand on the canvas, no doubt ready to flee should Henry make a sudden move. Slowly, so as not to frighten him, Henry got up and left the bed. The boy looked about nervously. "They will be coming for me." "Who will?" "My masters. They always find me when I escape. They find me and they—" Henry saw the horror on the boy's face, as if he were reliving whatever they had put him through. The boy began to pant in panic. "I have to kill you," he said, rising to his feet. He drew his dagger again and moved toward Henry. "If I don't, they will come for me." Henry grabbed the boy's hand before he could sink the dagger into his chest. "I can protect you from them." No one protects me. I have only myself." They wrestled for the dagger. Someone drew back the tent flap. "Majesty, we found—" The guard's voice died as he caught sight of their struggle. The guard shouted for reinforcements. The boy let go of the dagger as guards swarmed into the tent. Henry watched in awe as the scrawny child fought like a cornered lion. Had the boy possessed any strength on his starved bones, he would have easily defeated the 12-man guard, but as it was, they brought him down hard on the floor. Still, the boy fought so furiously that it took 5 guards to keep him there. "Release him!" All 12 of his guards looked at him as if he were crazed. "Majesty?" his captain asked hesitantly. "Do it!" It wasn't until they let go that Henry realized the boy's arm had been broken during the fight. His nose was bleeding and he had a cut on his forehead. Still, the child made no sound as he pushed himself to his feet. He merely held the broken arm to his side while he watched them warily, as if expecting the absolute worst from them. The child neither begged nor pleaded, and that told Henry much about what horrors the boy must have lived through. He stood strong and defiant before all of them. His guards regained their feet, and the captain came forward to address Henry, but he still kept a jaundiced eye on the youth. "We found 2 Saracens on the edge of camp, sire. I am sure he is one of them." "We are sure as well," Henry said. "Boy, what is your name?" The youth dropped his gaze to the floor. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "My masters call me Kurt." Henry frowned at the foreign term he'd learned the first few weeks that he had been in this land. It was used to mean either maggot or worm. "What is your Christian name?" "When I served the Earl of Ravenswood, I was called Sen." Henry's breath caught at the name, for he knew who this child was. "You're the McAllister's son?" Again the emptiness returned to the boy's eyes. "I am no man's son." Indeed, when Henry had offered to return this boy home to his father in Scotland, the old laird had said as much. Sin was the only one of the Scottish boys whose father had refused to have him. Not knowing what to do about the matter, and having little time to deal with it, Henry had left the boy in Harold of Ravenswood's custody. Obviously, that had been a mistake. It wasn't often Henry felt guilt, but he felt it now. It gripped his heart with unfamiliar pain and burned in his soul. This poor, unwanted boy had been his ward, and he had left him to a fate no child should ever know. "Fetch a surgeon," Henry said to his captain, "and bring food and wine for the boy." Sin looked up in shock at the order. Part of him still expected the king to hang him. At the very least, beat him. That was all he was fit for. That, and killing. "Don't look so surprised, boy," Henry said. "Come the morrow, we shall see you home." Home. The vague, elusive dream of that word had haunted him all his life. It was all he'd ever wanted. A home where he could be welcomed, a people who would accept him. His father had thrown him out of Scotland, where no one had ever wanted him, and the Saracens had spurned and spat on him in Outremer. But maybe this time, when he went to England, the people there would want him. Maybe this time he would at last find the home he had ached for. Aye, in England he would find peace. Chapter 1. London, 12 years later. "I would sooner gild myself, drunk, with a dull knife." Sin spoke with a slow, deadly emphasis on each word. King Henry II stood a few feet away from him without the protection of a bodyguard or other courtier. They were alone in the throne room, and no doubt any other man would be cowering before his monarch. But Sin had never cowered in his life, and Henry knew better than to expect such behavior from him now. Henry's face hardened. "I could command it of you." Sin cocked one arrogant brow and asked, "Then why don't you?" Henry smiled at that, and the tension left his body as he closed the distance between them. Their friendship had been forged years ago, in the dark of night, and at the end of a blade pressed deep against Henry's throat. Sin had spared the king's life, and since that day Henry had treasured the only man who had never been awed by his power or authority. Sin answered to no man, be he king, pope, sultan or beggar. But then there was nothing in life that awed Sin, nothing in life that commanded him or touched him. He was completely alone, and he preferred it that way. "I didn't gain this throne by being a fool, Sin. Should I command you to it, I know precisely what you'd do. You'd turn your back on me and head straight for yon door." Henry looked sincere. "God's truth, you are the only man alive I never wish to make my enemy. 'Tis why I ask this as a friend." "Damn you!" Henry laughed. "If I am damned, it is certainly for more serious offences than this matter." The humour left Henry's face, and he stared straight into Sin's eyes. "Now then, as a friend, I ask again, will you marry the Scotswoman?" Sin didn't answer. He clenched his teeth so tightly that he could feel the angry tick starting in his jaw. "Come now, Sin," Henry said with an almost pleading note in his voice. "I need you in this matter. You know the Scots. You are one of them." "I am not a Scot," Sin snarled. "Not now. Not ever." Henry ignored his rebuff. "You know how they think. You know their language. You alone are capable of this. Should I send another, those bloodthirsty savages would no doubt cut his throat and send his head back to me." "And you think they wouldn't do that to me?" Henry laughed. "I doubt if the Archangel Michael would cut your throat unless you consented to it." Truer words had never been spoken. Still, this favour sat ill in Sin's gut. The last thing on earth he desired was to be shackled to the Scots. He hated everything to do with Scotland and its people, and would sooner rot with pestilence than ever put one piece of his body in Scotland again. "I promise my reward will be great," Henry said. "I have no need of your money or rewards." Henry nodded. "I know. 'Tis why I trust you so much. You're the only man I have ever known who is truly above bribery. You are also a man of honour, and I know you would never walk away from a friend who needed you." Sin met his gaze without flinching. "Henry, as a friend, I ask you not to ask this of me." "I wish I didn't have to. I don't relish the thought of my only true ally so far from me, but I need a man I can trust, one who knows the soul of the Scots people, to lead them. The only other subject who could possibly end this matter is your brother Braden. Since he is now married—" Sin ground his teeth together. He had been glad to see his brother wed, but how he wished Braden were a bachelor once more. Braden was the one who knew how to please a woman. Sin knew war. His home the battlefield. All he had ever trusted in life not to betray him were his sword, his shield, and his horse. And he wasn't any too sure about his horse. He knew nothing of women and their softness, and he had no wish to know aught of them. "If it is of any consolation," Henry added, "she is a fetching wench. You will have no trouble siring a child on her." Sin narrowed his eyes. He balked at the thought of siring a child, especially one simply for the purpose of passing on titles and lands that meant nothing to him. "I am not a stallion, Henry. 'Tis not what the rumours that circulate through my court say. I've heard you're quite— Does this woman know what you have planned?" Sin asked, cutting him off. He didn't like discussing anything personal, and especially not with Henry. "Of course not. She knows nothing of you. 'Tis not her concern. She is my hostage, and she will do as she's told, or I will see her executed." Sin rubbed his hand over his face. He had no doubt Henry would do just that. He also knew who would be asked to fulfill that decree. "Henry, you know how I feel about a wife." "Aye, I do, but in all honesty I truly wish to see you wed. I have valued your service, but it has always concerned me that you have nothing in life you value. I have given you lands, wealth, and titles, and you spurn them as if they're poison. All the years I have known you, you have lived with one foot already in the grave. And you think a wife would bring me back over the threshold?" "Aye." Sin snorted. "Then I shall remind you of that the next time you complain of Eleanor." Henry laughed so hard he choked. "Were you any other man, you would be dead for such audacity." "And I would see the same of you." At least it succeeded in checking Henry's mirth. Henry paced the small path in front of Sin and fell quiet. By his face, Sin could tell he was thinking of something long ago. When the king spoke, his voice was thick with nostalgia. "I remember well the night you held that dagger to my throat. Do you remember what you said?" "Aye, I offered you my loyalty if you would grant me my freedom." "Yea, you did. And I need your loyalty now. Philippe is on my heels trying to wrench Normandy and Aquitaine from my hands. My sons are yapping for their own slices of power, and now this Highland clan attacks the few Englishmen I have guarding my northern borders. I cannot continue to be attacked from all sides. Even a raging bull can be brought low by a pack of hungry dogs. And I am tired of it. I need peace before they kill me. Will you help me?" Inwardly, Sin cringed as he heard the 4 words he had never been able to deny. Damn his blackened soul for it. It was the one piece of his conscience that hadn't been destroyed, and Henry knew it. Sin growled, low in his throat. Surely there had to be a means to escape this wretched event, and surely he— Sin almost smiled as the thought occurred to him. 'Twas perfect, and as insidious as he himself was. "Aye, I'll marry the wench, but only if you can find a priest who will sanction it." Henry's face blanched. Sin smiled evilly. In the last 9 years he had been excommunicated 5 times. The most recent one carried a papal ban so severe that it should have him roasting out eternity right by the devil's side. The Pope himself referred to Sin as Satan's most favoured spawn. Henry would never find a priest who would dare allow Sin to take part in a sacrament. "You think you have me, don't you?" Henry asked. "I think nothing of the sort, Henry. As you said, I know the Scots, and I know they would accept nothing less than a sanctified marriage. I have merely given you the conditions of our union." "Very well, then. I accept your terms, and intend to hold you to them." Chapter 2. "Are we going to escape this time, Callie?" Caledonia, of the clan MacNeely, pulled her baby brother to a stop in the narrow corridor where they were making their way out of King Henry's castle. She knelt beside his little body. "If you'll be keeping your words to yourself, we just might," she whispered. Callie smiled to soften her harsh words, and straightened the brown Phrygian cap on his small head. His face still held the baby-fat cheeks and bright, trusting blue eyes of the toddler he had been not all that long ago. "Now remember, we're English servants, which means if you open your mouth, they'll know we are Highlanders for sure." He nodded. Callie tucked Jamie's orangish-red curls back under his cap. His hair was the same shade as her own, but that was all they shared, for Callie looked like her dearly departed mother, and Jamie favoured his own mother, Morna. He looked at her now with blue eyes steeled by determination, and with a sagacity no lad of his tender age should possess. At 6 years, the boy had seen more than his fair share of tragedy. God willing, he would see no more of it. She kissed the lovable little demon lightly on the brow and rose to her feet. Her stomach knotted with nerves, she led him slowly down the lone corridor toward the spiral stairs that should exit by the rear of the castle. At least that was what she'd been told by the maid who had been helping them plot their escape. How she prayed her newfound friend hadn't lied to her or betrayed her. They had to get out of this place. Callie could stand no more. If she had to stomach another Sassenach leering at her or making crude comments about her wild Scottish heritage, she would have his tongue for it. But it was what they did to Jamie that truly made her blood boil. The son of a laird, he was equal to the highest born of the English, and those beasts made him serve them like the lowliest of peasants, while they mocked and belittled him. She could stand no more of her brother's tears. No more of watching the knights rough-handle the young lad and cuff his ears. The English were animals. Ever since King Henry's men had killed her guards and captured the two of them as they travelled to visit her sickly aunt, Callie had been trying to find a way for them to escape and make their way home. Yet, for all her careful cunning, these wretched English beasts were truly spawns of the devil. No matter what she tried, it seemed one of them always saw through her escape and stopped her. But this time she would succeed. She knew it. Tightening her grip on Jamie's hand, she paused at the top of the stairs. She pulled back the corner of her linen veil and cocked her head to listen. Nothing. It appeared no one was about to challenge them. They were free. The maid, Aelfa, had promised her that once they left the stairs, the back door opened just a few feet from the postern gate that the servants used during daylight hours to travel from the castle into London. The maid had sworn to her that no one would stop her once she reached it. Callie's heart pounded in sweet expectation. She rushed down the dark spiral steps at a breakneck speed, with Jamie one step behind. Freedom! She could taste it, she could smell it, she could— Callie's thoughts scattered as she tripped and fell over something on the stairs. She felt her body pitch forward, and all she could do was extend her arms in hopes of catching herself. But instead of falling, she felt strong arms wrap about her and pull her against a chest as hard as the dark stone walls surrounding her. Faster than she could blink, the man released her to stand on the stair above him. "God's blood, woman, watch where you're going!" Jamie opened his mouth to speak. Callie quickly covered his mouth with her hand and did her best English accent. "Forgive me, my lord." It was only then she dared look at him. Being on the tall side, she was used to standing eye level with most men, but where she expected to see his head, she saw only wide, muscular shoulders encased by darkness. Her heart pounded, for those were very large shoulders indeed. Callie frowned at his black clothes. Never before had she seen a man not of the church dressed all in black, and this man was definitely no priest. His mail, coif, and surcoat, which were darker than pitch, bore no markings on them whatsoever. How very odd. She tried to take a step back, but Jamie on the stair behind her and her narrow perch on the step prevented it. She felt trapped all of a sudden, trapped by the knight's powerful presence, which seemed to seep into her very bones. This was a dangerous man, a deadly one. She felt it with every instinct she possessed. She dared to look up his tanned, strong neck, which bore a deep scar, then over his handsome face to see the eyes of the devil himself. Those midnight black eyes burned with intelligence and fire. They seared her with an eerie light that made her tremble. Callie swallowed. Never had she seen such a man. Without a doubt, he was the fairest of face and form she'd ever beheld. His features were well defined and sculpted, his jaw strong and perfect and dusted by just a hint of manly stubble.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?